Welcome to the podcast, everybody. My name is Jacob, and I'm a sports guy.
And my name is Tim, and I am not a sports guy. Can I just tell you, I love it when you welcome us into the episode. You always have just such a strong presence. It just gets me so amped.
Y'all heard that? Y'all, I'm going to have to write down that compliment. That was really nice. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is the Not a Sports Guy podcast, a show where we log Tim's journey of becoming a sports fan. And this season, we're covering the NBA. At the very beginning, we spun a wheel of random teams to follow. We spun a wheel of all of the teams in the NBA. Whichever one it landed on, we plan on following throughout the entire season, and we landed on the Nets. So this is episode 3. We're going to be giving you guys an update on the Nets, on basketball, but more importantly, we're going to be giving you guys an update on how Tim's journey of being a sports fan is.
Yes.
So, are you excited about that, Tim? Are you excited to jump into really how it's been, but you know, with the podcast off, the microphone off, how you actually have been, tracking sports?
No, I'm excited to tell people about my new life as an alleged sports fan.
I'm working on it. Consider you a sports fan.
Oh, dude, I can't call myself a sports guy yet. Otherwise, we couldn't call ourselves not a sports guy.
So we're gonna claim you're not a sports guy just for the sake of the podcast title.
Yeah, not until the end of the season. Then maybe.
So then we'll switch it after that. We'll go back to now we are a sports guy podcast.
Exactly.
And if you're a new listener, like I said at the beginning, we are following NBA this season, but we're going to switch sports throughout different seasons. So when the NBA is over, we're going to follow a new sport, and then when that sport's over, we'll follow another one. We're a rotating sports podcast. So if you're not NBA, check back next year. We may be following a sport you enjoy.
That's right. And just as a teaser, and we've got a lot of logistics to work through, but the Summer Olympics are taking place this year, so that will probably be our next season. It'll be a smaller season, obviously. It'll be a little bit formatted a little bit differently than a regular season, but just something to look forward to if you're not really into the NBA, but you might be a fan of the Olympics. I've never really invested too much time in the Olympics. It's just kind of, and I'm not just saying that, like I've watched the Olympics a little bit more than any other sport probably, which I know that's multiple sports, but
no, Olympic is the sport.
No, but you know what I mean? But I really don't know a lot about many of the sports. In fact, I probably couldn't.
There are a ton of sports in the Olympics.
Well, and I don't even really know the different, like what sports are going to be done in the summer versus the winter.
Right.
Like for some reason, I thought basketball was in the summer, which is so stupid, but I know now it's a winter Olympics.
It kind of is both a winter and summer sport. I mean, I think like the NBA season ends around May or June. So like it's kind of at the beginning of summer, but I guess it plays more so through fall and winter and spring. But you're right. The Olympics covers so many different sports. I'm excited to see which sports will be covered in the summer. Me and my girlfriend Clarissa actually watched a lot of the Winter Olympics this year, and it was so much fun. Like we watched so many different sports. We got into like the skateboarding, because I think skateboarding was new for the first time in the Olympics this year. So we watched a lot of we watched those events. I mean, gosh, it was in Japan this year too. So like, obviously it's a huge time difference there. So while it was day here, we were kind of catching up and recapping on what happened the night before. So we could just flip from sport to sport and just continue watching all day long. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to this next year's Summer Olympics. I think that'll be an interesting season, but maybe we can all together, learn about different sports and have a fun time there. So
that's right.
But yeah, so since last week, the Nets have played 3 games. There hasn't been too much going on within the NBA, but we have a few hot topics to talk about this week. But other than that, Tim, how's your past week been?
It's been good. Like you said, the Nets have only played 3 times. Trying to keep track of that. I feel like it was a shorter week. In fact,
Yeah,
especially because the Nets, their third game was tonight, which unfortunately I wasn't able to watch. But leading up to this, so it's kind of feels like they've only played 2 games. But yeah, I mean, it's been good. I'm enjoying just still trying to familiarize myself with not just the Nets, but all the teams and the big names and kind of who's who and what's what. So I still feel like
exactly.
there's so much to kind of catch up with, but I'm enjoying. I do feel like far more knowledgeable than when we started, for sure.
And that's one thing we'll talk about in this first segment, which we're going to call Life of a New Sports Fan. I've got a few questions I'm going to ask Tim specifically about what he has enjoyed about this journey so far, what has been his least favorite thing, his favorite thing, how he's consumed the content. We're going to jump into all of that because if you're listening and you're a new sports fan, um, you may be curious about how Tim has held up so far. So we're going to kind of jump into that, and so let's go ahead. I've got one question for you, Tim.
That's it.
This is well, I've got multiple questions, but this one main question, like we've been saying, you're 2 weeks in being an NBA fan. How has your journey been so far overall?
If I had to sum it up, I feel like I don't know. I want to say overwhelming, but I don't mean that in like necessarily a negative way.
Okay.
I mean, it is exhausting. Don't get me wrong, but I have like very much enjoyed. Like I enjoy watching, like looking forward to a game and then turning it on. And I will say it is hard delegate or not delegating, but what's the word I'm looking for? Juggling priorities because I also
Mm,
have, a wife and I've got a 16-month-old kid. And so, sometimes I have to pick and choose my battles as far as like, well, because we don't want to have the TV on too much around my kid Crosby, but at the same
right.
time, I want him to be a sports guy. So when sometimes I'll have a game on and have him watch as much as his attention span
And I
allows.
think you told me the other day he's got a ball now that he's starting to shoot. Like you're showing him how to have like get a jumper, maybe
I
shoot
don't
some threes into the
I feel like
basket.
you're joking, but that actually really is happening right now. Um,
Yeah.
he's got these they're like little ball pit type balls, but he has a
Hmm.
basket that he'll carry around and he actually is learning to throw. And so I'm trying to teach him how to do that, but I don't think I told you that. So
You did tell me that.
did I?
I was
Okay.
hoping you would share the story with us,
Oh
but I
man.
did kind of present it as a joke.
Okay. Yeah. No, but yeah, he really is. So that's been
Awesome.
fun.
But I definitely understand what you're saying about trying to find time in your life to watch these games because there are a lot of games in the season. They're not like hour-long games. 3 hours, like
Hmm.
it's definitely something you want to plan out within your week, especially if you have family and you've got things going on. It's hard to just jump down and watch a game, or especially a
Hmm.
full game too. Like it's easier
Hmm.
to kind of catch little spurts of games.
Right.
But okay, so overwhelming is how you would describe it. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like definitely it could be overwhelming for you because you're also have the responsibility of jumping on this podcast every week and like having to talk basketball. So if you're not doing your research during the week, you're going to come on here and sound stupid like you did in the first episode, Tim.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Just kidding. I don't want to call you stupid. You
No,
weren't stupid. You were just new
ignorant.
to it. Exactly. There you go. So
I
so
agree. But the podcast, what's nice about it is it kind of holds me accountable to make sure that I am keeping up, which
right.
again, for those of you who are listening, who are in my position, we're here. And Jacob will give you guys our handle for Instagram. If you want to talk with us, like we can help keep you on track as well. Don't feel
Mhm.
like, um, you're alone in this because I think for me in the past, I've said that I'm going to try to do this. And it is very easy to just kind of feel like, oh man. Because I mean, the big thing for me is like when people around me are having conversations about sports. And I mean, somebody who is really truly a fan, they're going to talk in almost another language to each other.
It feels that way.
Yeah. And that was kind of a discouragement for me in the past. And so, one thing I want this show to be for you guys, as much as it for me, is that we're not talking about it in such a way that makes you feel excluded. So if you have questions, definitely send them our way, and let's talk about it from my perspective, from the new sports fan perspective, kind of thing. So
yeah, that's absolutely right. This is very much a journey, not only for me and Tim, but for you, the listener, as well. If you are a sports guy or if you aren't, it's very much both ways. We want this show for everyone to be able to listen, So,
yeah. And Jacob, I know you jokingly called me stupid, and I know that you were joking, but
I didn't mean it like that.
No.
Man.
I know.
I feel bad for even joking about it.
No.
Bad.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is because, for lack of a better phrase, our intent is to dumb the conversation down in a way that's digestible for the new guys. So
sports for dummies.
Yeah, exactly.
So you said it was overwhelming this first week. For someone that is, let's say there is someone who has joined us on this journey from episode 1. You actually may know somebody, Tim, personally, that's on this journey with us. You've consumed a lot of content these past 2 weeks. And that's why it could be overwhelming for you. But for someone else that doesn't have to work or really kind of do work for this podcast, do you think that they could consume it in a way where it's not as overwhelming? Because if you follow NBA on social media or watch there's a lot of names coming at you. There's a lot of headlines coming at, is it almost overwhelming no matter how you go about it, you think?
I think so. But what I really like about what we've done, and it doesn't have to be a random team, but having a team and sticking with them and following them is a great way to get into the game versus just I'm going to keep track of the NBA as a whole.
Right.
That is an impossible task from my position, but having the Nets and saying, well, let me familiarize myself with them, with their players, with their record. I'm going to watch as many games of theirs as I can. And through that lens, I'm getting to be introduced to other teams, other players.
Right.
That's been super helpful for me. And so I think if you are trying to get your foot in the door, find a team and just stick with them. And by the end of the season, you're going to know what's going on in the league. Maybe not everything, maybe not everybody, but you're going to have a far better grasp. But don't bite off more than you can chew.
I think another, like you said, either choose a random team, and what actually may help you is, for example, choose the team that that plays in your city or a team that your buddies like, because then you will get to be around conversation about that team more. You're going to be hearing these names more, and you'll start to recognize them more regularly. So awesome. I think you've given great advice to people so far that are trying to jump into this, sports life, I guess we should call it, even though that kind of sounds lame. Maybe we can come up with a better name for that. So what has been your favorite thing so far about this journey of becoming a new sports fan?
Ooh, that's a hard question to answer. I mean, I very much enjoy watching the games when I'm able to. And, it's funny, before this, if I was ever, present with somebody watching a game and they're kind of yelling at the screen or just doing their, couch coaching or whatever you want to call it. It's funny. It's
you
easy
turned
to
into Coach Swaney last week, though.
Well, I was going to say it's easy to poke fun of somebody, but I do find myself doing that. Even I'll be watching a game, and my wife could care less about this, but I'm just I'll be like, dang, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Well, they stupid passing, It's just I'm finding myself talking to the screen and really getting into it. So I enjoy that, and I enjoy having a team to just kind of root for and like the camaraderie, because I work with a guy who's a Nets fan. We mentioned him last week, and shout out again to Elijah for the second time.
Elijah's a Nets fan? I didn't know it was Elijah.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to throw him under the bus there.
Wow.
But yeah, well, he's from Brooklyn, so he has
that all makes sense
right.
then.
Yeah.
He can root for the Nets.
He can stamp his name, yeah. But it's nice to have that camaraderie, that just feel like that brings me closer to my guy Elijah, so.
Exactly. So that's cool. Yeah, I think definitely one of my favorite things about sports in general is just sitting down and watching the games. Like, I mean, that's what it's about, is getting to sit and watch these games, if it's either in your living room or in person or, at a restaurant or a bar with your friends, like whatever it is, it's very much the best aspect is just sitting there and watching it and talking with people about the game. So I'm glad that you've been able to watch some Nets games, because, they're not, luckily we did get like a mainstream team that's going to be on ESPN and NBA TV and stuff. Like, you'll actually get to watch some of those games. If we got a no-name team, there's probably a good chance you may not have even been able to watch one of their games so far. So,
okay. I didn't know that.
It's been
That's
nice.
Interesting.
So, asked you about your favorite thing. Let's jump into your least favorite thing about, being a sports fan so far.
All the games, like just trying to keep up with all the games. That's an easy one. Yeah.
Really?
Especially
out of everything.
Yeah. Well, and one, it's a lot. I mean, 82 games for each team is a lot, but also it, like you said, doing homework for this podcast. I'm not just tracking with the Nets. So just as a disclaimer, I mean, that's my team, and I'm focusing on them more than anybody, but I am trying to familiarize myself with what's going on elsewhere. The Hawks are kind of like my second team, specifically because I know that that's kind of your number one team. So I still want to keep track of them, and I'm from Atlanta. So, I'm still rooting for them. Now, if it's Hawks versus Nets, I've got to go Nets, but,
really?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, Nets is my team this season. I'm telling you, like I'm committing. I know last episode I was wavering, or I sounded like I was wavering, but I'm not. Like, I'm a Nets guy. At least through the end of the season.
Next week, Hawks,
I know,
Nets.
right?
So we'll really get to see who gets bragging rights until they play again, I think in April? So wow. So okay, so your least favorite thing is the amount of games. And I think I can agree with you. That's somewhat why I love football so much, is because there's one, like, for example, your team, they play once a week.
Right.
So you really can just focus in on that one game. They play on Thursday, Sundays, and Mondays, but, for the most time, or for the most part, you're really only keeping up with your team. So that's one game a week. But with basketball, baseball, I'm sure even hockey, you're playing multiple games a week, which is very difficult to keep up with. Even harder to, like you said, schedule to watch the game, because if you have 3 games in 1 week, I'm sure your family doesn't want you sitting in front of the TV 3 times that week watching 3 hours of games every time. So I definitely see how that can be difficult. So jumping into the next question, I've got, how have you consumed your content? Like, has it been on social media? Have you been watching on YouTube, or is it all TV? Because I know you said you have the NBA TV. You've subscribed to that, so you get to watch some of their television content. So tell me about how you've been consuming it all.
Yeah, for sure. So this is going to be a nice plug for some companies. NBA has an app. They have multiple levels of subscription. I purchased the bare minimum. It's like $6.99 a month, and pretty much every night that there's a game, they will feature one of those games. I don't know how they select it, but you can at least stream a game a night, pretty much. So that's helpful. I also subscribe to ESPN because I've got the Disney bundle thing. So fortunately, I didn't have to even, spend any more money on that. But I have ESPN
shout out
Plus,
to NBA, shout out to ESPN, shout out to
Disney. Oh my goodness,
YouTube,
which is good because Disney, they need money.
Exactly, because they're actually, I think did they file for bankruptcy yet? I'm not sure.
Twice in the past year. Disclaimer, they
Next
really
week, this
didn't.
podcast isn't even going to be on the air anymore. We're going to get a cease and desist.
No, but ESPN Plus allows you to stream any game that's being featured on ESPN, which is nice. And then, like you said, YouTube has been also a huge benefit in watching highlights, because I think at least the next day after games, they'll post like a 10-minute highlight reel for every game, which is super helpful. So those are my big three. You mentioned social media. I know you track a lot with social media. I'm not a social media guy, but I think that's a pretty good way to keep up with the news.
It sounds like a new podcast idea. Not a social media guy.
Ooh. You think so?
Okay, let's go ahead and copyright that and trademark it, and no one take it. No, but yeah. So I'm definitely, I follow NBA, all the like sports pages on Instagram. So that's where I'm mainly getting a lot of my like news updates, my content. Watch a bunch of like, I've been on YouTube. Like tonight, I went and watched a bunch. Sneak peek of a later topic. We're gonna be talking about the rookie ladder, talk about some of the top rookies. But I was able to go on YouTube, watch a lot of their highlights on there. And like you said, just like I barely get to watch. Like I don't think I've sat down and watched a full Nets game since we've done the podcast. I've watched like bits and pieces of Nets games, but I've mostly been getting
I thought you were in this with me, man. Jeez.
I've watched every Hawks game though. No, I'm just kidding. No, it is hard to sit down and get time to watch some of these games, but I've been watching all the like full game highlights on YouTube, so I feel like I'm getting a good, mix of how our players are doing. And yeah, like you said, Instagram, I've been getting a bunch of highlights on there as well. So that's kind of where I consume most of my content when it comes to the NBA. And that's how I kind of, and like, yeah, going on the websites, like you said, ESPN, NBA, they're always posting stuff. So there's always stuff to keep up with. If you're a new sports fan, there's plenty of places to get your content.
Right. And just to go back, the NBA app is free. You do not have to buy the subscription. You can't view games. Well, they have like a week trial, first of all, free week trial. So you can use that, but you can't view games if you don't buy the subscription. But it still gives you news. It gives you stats and like the team standings and stuff like that. So even if you don't want to pay for that, don't feel like you have to. It's still a resource that's very helpful. I think you can actually view highlights as well on there. So don't feel like you have to spend money to embark on this journey.
That's exactly right. Well, Tim, thank you for answering these questions.
Thanks for asking them.
You've given a bunch of great advice to some new sports fans, and I hope people are joining along with us on this journey. Again, if you're following us on Instagram at Not a Sports Guy Podcast, make sure you leave a comment. Let us know you're listening, and we'll give you a little shout out. But up next, we're going to be talking about this week in basketball as well as the Nets update. But before we get into that, let's jump into a quick break. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Thank you for sitting through that ad break right there. Thank you to all of our sponsors that we just shouted out in the ad break. Let's jump into it, man. This week in basketball, like I said at the top of the show, there wasn't really many big things that happened like last week with the LeBron James and Isaiah Stewart scuffle. But this week there were some cool things that happened that I would like to talk about. So first and foremost, the Suns advanced to a 17-game win streak. They beat the Warriors.
Stopped.
And they also beat the Nets. So
yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, let's not talk about it. I mean, currently, as we're recording this, the Warriors and Suns are playing. It's halftime. Warriors are up 51-48. So maybe the Warriors can snap that streak. I'm hoping. But why am I hoping?
Yeah, I was going to say,
why do I have this like animosity towards the Suns? Like,
it's interesting. Yeah, I have actually really enjoyed keeping up with the Suns. Now, I'm a Steph Curry fan as much as anybody is, but one guy that I really have enjoyed tracking with is Chris Paul. I know he's been around for a while, but something, and I really wish I had like written this down, but his stats are just really interesting to me because for somebody who is, one of the greats. I mean, I think he's on the 75 greatest, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Gosh,
I believe he
I'm the
is.
sports guy. I should know this.
God,
I'm
come
sure
on,
he is.
man.
Let me look it up. Let me look it up. But keep going. What do you like about Chris Paul though?
Well, I mean, just for somebody who, you have a lot of big names in the NBA. You've got your LeBrons and your Kevin Durant's. And I mean, I'm not saying that they're not team players by any stretch, but Chris Paul, I think, has like a higher assist stat. Like he's got more
Yeah, because last
assists.
week we talked about the MVP ladder, and he's
Mhm.
averaging like 14 assists a game. I mean, he is a point guard at heart. He's dishing the ball out. He's getting the ball to the scorers on the team. I mean, not to say
Yeah,
he's not one, but I mean
right.
Devin Booker, he's a
Well, and
scorer.
that's the thing is like I know. I mean, he can score. Like he is one of those guys who could. But there's just the fact that his assists are so high. I mean, he's very much team oriented. I've even heard some
Right.
interviews after some of his games. Like I think I listened to an interview of him after they beat the Warriors, and he was just kind of like really uplifting his team. He wasn't bringing on the glory to himself, even though
Mhm.
I mean, I know it's not just him, but like he is one of their two like star players.
Yeah.
And especially after that first game with the Warriors, they lost Booker for, he had hurt himself, and he kind of, not put the team on the back. I'm not saying it was just him, but I mean, he led the team to victory. And I think he could have used that moment to really like been like, yeah, man, like
I'm the
I just put
man.
myself, yeah. And instead he was just like, look, we just got to come together as a team. And I just really respect that. I really like him. He just seems like a super humble guy, despite being one of the best. Did you find out if he's on the
He
75?
he is on the 75 list, so shout
Yeah.
out to Chris Paul for that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember last week I told you whenever we were like reviewing the Nets Suns game, I was like, one guy I'm scared about is Chris Paul because he's a good
Mm-hmm.
vet. He
Mm-hmm.
has the high IQ.
Yeah.
He's a team player like that. So he definitely brought it against the Nets. And another guy with the Suns was Devin Booker. I mean, I watched the highlights of the game. I mean, Devin Booker was just, constantly shooting and scoring. It was almost insane how good he was doing. But it just goes to show he's the Suns are on a roll right now. And it looks like if they do lose tonight, I mean, it's against the other best team in the league. So
Right. So it's not to
um,
say that they're, yeah. Which is Booker playing tonight? Do you know? I'm assuming he is.
Booker, I'm assuming he is. I'll double check, but uh, I don't think like because I think it was a hamstring injury that he had
Mm-hmm.
against the Warriors last time, and it kept him out for that entire game. But I don't think it was like anything long term.
It looks like he's not played though this game so far. He's on
Maybe
the
it is
bench.
long term. Is he on the
Maybe he's
bench
just
right
resting it.
now, or is he?
According to the NBA
Yes,
app,
he has
he's
not played. Y'all are getting live research on
well,
Devin
kind
Booker.
of. I mean, you're not going to hear this till Monday, but
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to see if there's been any update regarding like how long he's expected to be out. The latest thing is he's expected to be out for a few games. So we'll leave it at
which I
that.
think that's impressive because I mean the Suns are only at halftime 3 points down without him entirely.
Right.
So if they lose, they can blame it on that. But if they win, I mean, it just shows really how good they are. I think again, I'm a Steph Curry fan as much as anyone is, but I think I'm pulling for the Suns on this one. Just
Really?
they're a team that I feel like I've heard the Warriors being talked about for the past few years. I don't really hear anything about the Suns. I haven't, at least until this year. I guess they made it to the playoffs last year.
Last year they made it to the finals and they lost.
Oh, okay.
So they
Well,
definitely made their name last year. Chris Paul re-signed with them this year. Um, I think he's really trying to I think he feels something special about this team. I mean, clearly there is something special with them.
mhm.
They're winning a lot of games, haven't lost in over a month or so. Clearly they've got some sort of heat with them. So I think that they'll be able to get to the finals this year if they can continue playing like this. I mean, that's just another thing. I guess I feel like I don't like them because I don't know. What is it about it? I can't even.
Maybe that's something we can talk about later, like in another episode, just the psychology behind it, because I feel similarly about like to the Knicks. Like I'm just not a fan of the Knicks at all, and I don't really know why. Like I kind of have some ideas, but there are certainly teams that I'm finding myself kind of cheering for, and there are teams that I kind of, it's just this, and I have no reason behind a lot of it.
You're right. There's really no rhyme or reason why I'm disliking the Suns, but there's sometimes just something about a certain team that just rubs you the wrong way, and you don't even like following them. So there's the Suns. Next up, we want to talk about the Grizzlies because they set an NBA record with their 73-point win over the Thunder last night. Fun fact: the Thunder own the largest margin of loss for both home and away games. Obviously, last night they lost against the Grizzlies, 152-79, and then I think a year or two ago they lost to the Pacers at home, 152-95. So maybe there's a record for them that's like they haven't given up more than 152, but like they've given that up twice. So
that's ridiculous. And they're both like, I mean, they're not like super high ranking teams. Well,
yeah,
I guess
the Thunder's horrible. They're horrible this year. I mean, how many games they won? 5, 6 games?
Yeah, they've won
Maybe
6.
7?
I guess it does make sense because Memphis is over a 500 team. So I guess I can't be too hard on Oklahoma.
Yeah. I mean, they have a young squad. We'll talk about one of their emerging players here soon, but definitely not expecting them to do anything special this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was pretty cool. Next up, let's talk about the Bucks. They defeated the Hornets 127-125 thanks to a Giannis layup. This was one game that you actually brought up to me. And
yeah. So if you haven't watched the highlights of that game, or if you have access to the game, I would highly recommend it. I only watched the highlights. And again, most of the highlights you can catch are only about 10 minutes long, but it was a really good game. And the highlights actually got me like on the edge of my seat because I didn't know the score going into it. So sorry, this is a spoiler if you're going to go check it out, but it was a very close game. And it was a lot of fun because you have two kind of star players, Giannis, of course, who helped the Bucks bring home the title last year. But then you've got we talked about LaMelo Ball, and he's kind of a younger star, but he is kind of leading the Hornets. And to just kind of see them go back and forth, there was a lot of fun energy. I felt like both teams really brought it. It wasn't like, I mean, obviously the score kind of reflects that. It wasn't
right.
One team was just playing bad, and I don't think that the Hornets did anything wrong. They just got beat by a better team, but just barely. You know what I mean?
Right.
So just the highlights alone, which I mean, the highlights are the highlights for a reason. So I'm sure it wasn't all, perfect, but it was a fun highlight reel to watch. I think the games I was listening to some commentary and just people really praising both teams and thinking that it would be really exciting to see the two of them go up against each other in the playoffs. So, and I'm looking forward to that, hoping that happens.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I watched the highlights as well. It just felt like you were watching two teams that just had it put together, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just had the chemistry, the skill, everything about it just worked so well for both teams. Like, I mean, obviously the Bucks a little bit more so than the Hornets, but like still, man, I mean, LaMelo, such a young player.
I think what's interesting too, I don't mean to cut you off because I definitely want to talk about that, but
no, yeah.
I mean, literally, if there was like 5 more seconds on the clock, it could have gone the other way. So really, it's just like, were the Bucks even better? Because it was just kind of this back and forth, So,
and they even almost hit that final half court shot to win.
Yeah,
it. Like,
that just
shot
was threw close. It up. Yeah, crazy. Definitely go watch the highlights if you haven't.
Yeah, that was probably one of the better games of the season so far. I mean, it was a high scoring game. Some people may say, well, there was no defense, but I mean, it's fair to say, but at the same time, I mean, Giannis was just hitting everything. I mean, LaMelo was finding ways to get the ball. Like, that's the thing about LaMelo. Like, he's shooting these deep threes, but he's also, like, passing alley-oops. Like, he's getting the ball to the other players on the team. And just Giannis, he's just bigger than everybody, man. Like, he is just running past people, pushing them out of the way, getting rebounds. Like, you had told me recently that you had found a Giannis highlight on YouTube that you watched, and you really liked it. So is he one of the players that, like, you're definitely keeping an eye out for?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But go back to what you said. One thing I do really enjoy about LaMelo is his deep threes. Like, he doesn't ever really shoot on the 3-point line. He's always like 4 foot back at least.
Right.
But he shoots them so confidently and so quickly. Like, you don't I rarely will expect it. Like, it's looking like he's about to set up a play or something, and then all of a sudden he just throws it up so confidently and it drops. And I'm like, what? How is this guy doing this? You know?
And it's like so satisfying to watch too, man. Like, I don't know. That's the thing. Like, when I watched that highlight reel, like, just watching the team chemistry and just how, like, energetic both teams were, like, I hate to say, I just don't feel that when I watch the Nets games, man. Like, there's just something missing in
I
the
agree.
Nets that just isn't exciting. And, like, I'm going to go ahead and get the horns ready. Nets are getting eliminated early this year.
Stop. Hey, you're still supposed to be a Nets fan. Come on, man.
No, I'm going to be a Nets fan. But I'm telling you, man, just watching these other teams play, and I know it's early in the season. I can't jump to conclusions already. But just watching these other teams play right now, there's just something missing with the Nets. And
it doesn't feel like team ball. I mean, if I had to put my finger on it, and I'm obviously very fresh to this, so I could be wrong, but it doesn't feel like there's a ton of team chemistry. And I'm not saying they don't play well together, but it's certainly missing that element of just, I agree with you, and I don't really know quite how to put my finger on it, but there's a different energy that the Bucks have, that the Hornets have, that the Nets don't have. I agree. I'm curious because you are more familiar, and correct me if I'm wrong, but last year KD and Harden were both on the team last year with Kyrie Irving, correct?
Right.
Do you think it was different with the three of them? Like, if Kyrie were back, would it feel like a different team?
It 1,000,000% would feel like a different team. When I was watching the highlight reel from the Nets and the Knicks game, even the commentator was like, they're trying to find a way to maneuver with the team they have without Kyrie right now. Like, they're still trying to figure out how to play without him. And because I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't feel like team ball. It feels like, let's get the ball to KD and Harden, and if they miss, then, like, hopefully we have another guy that can shoot it up. Like, Patty Mills is stepping up, LaMarcus Aldridge is stepping up, and we're going to get into the Nets later. But just like it doesn't feel like team ball. It feels like, let's just get the ball to these two guys, and if they can't do it, then that's it.
And I don't want to keep it on the Nets because, like you said, we'll move to them. But that's an interesting point because we do have some. They're not the only two good players. I mean, Patty Mills is great. What's the other guy's name that you just mentioned?
Aldridge.
Marcus Aldridge. Yeah, I really enjoy watching him play. They're both really good. They're both they have a solid squad. But yeah, it's just so interesting. Like. And I don't even feel like KD and Harden are hogging the ball necessarily.
No, I mean, they're scoring. Like, we're winning games. It's not like we're bad at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Anyways, we'll move on. We'll get more into that later.
Next up, just a real quick thing. I don't really expect us to spend any time talking about this, but LeBron got tested positive for COVID last week, and so he was expected to be out for a lot of games. He ended up retesting, and he had like 8. He like get tested for like 8 times in a row on his way back from like the Kings game, I think, to LA. Like, he had gotten tested like 8 times or something like that, and they all came back negative. So he got cleared to come back and play. That was almost like a really big thing that happened in the NBA. But
I want to talk about this though. Why is that a headline?
Exactly,
because it's LeBron.
You're right.
Isn't that interesting? Which, I'm not throwing you under the bus. I know that was just it's a headline.
Well, no, throw me under the bus because I'm part of this of the media, I guess you can say, that's continuing to throw that narrative out into the world.
Yeah.
So why is it big news though? Like is it?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's because he is the biggest NBA player in the world,
Yeah.
and he gets COVID. I mean, I guess that is news, but like, I don't know. I didn't have to cover it. You know what? Just
Yeah.
delete the episode, man. Just delete it, dude. We're
We're
restarting.
going to title the episode "LeBron Clears COVID Protocol."
Right. That'll be the third, the second episode out of 3 episodes that has LeBron's name in it.
Hey, we're just trying to get clicks. We're just trying to get.
We're just trying
listens.
to clickbait y'all. Let's go ahead. Last thing to cover for this week in basketball, we're going to cover the rookie ladder. Last week we covered the MVP ladder to see who's kind of leading in the MVP votes. Or there's no voting yet, but you know what I'm talking about. So this week I decided let's look at the rookies instead of some of these bigger name people like Steph and KD and everybody. Let's look at some of the rookies that are doing well. And who's number one, Tim? We've got Scotty Barnes.
Scotty
with
Barnes.
the Toronto Raptors. So were you able to watch any of his highlights?
Yeah, I was going to say I watched all. So you've got 5 names on here: Scotty Barnes, Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham, Josh Giddey, and Franz Wagner.
It's actually Franz Wagner.
Franz Wagner.
And I'm not joking.
Okay, my apologies.
It sounds
Mr.
like
Wagner.
I was trying to be
No.
there, but I'm not.
I believed you. My apologies, Mr. Wagner, for pronouncing it wrong. But my apologies also because his highlights are the only ones I didn't watch. So I'm trying to familiarize myself with the team, but I'm
not
didn't
gonna
get
lie,
his.
you're not missing much, and I hate to be that way. I feel bad for even saying that, but all of the guys we're about to talk about are better.
Well, it's a perfect segue because I felt like for the 4 that I did watch, Scotty Barnes, it is very clear to me why he is number 1. He was,
really?
He's, to me, he was just far more intriguing to watch. I mean, I'm not saying that the rest of them weren't good players and don't belong on this, rookie ladder, but it felt to me like he just had a lot of confidence, far more than anybody else.
He definitely does, and you can just see by watching some highlight tapes how he carries himself on the court, how he's like the types of plays that he's executing are very much like he's been in the league for a while. I've got some stats here. He leads the rookie class in minutes, scoring, and rebounds, which is obviously a pretty big deal, and that's probably why he's leading the rookie ladder right now. I mean, if you're a rookie and you're leading in all of these different categories, like you're going to get recognized.
Just naturally,
and he was the number 4 pick in the draft. So that's just something that I like to throw in here with each of these guys' names, just seeing how well they're doing, where they're sitting on that rookie of the year list compared to when they were picked. And again, it's not always a good representation of the draft pick doesn't really, I mean, he went 4th and he went to Toronto. I mean, it's very much a team game. So some of these guys went to better teams than the other guys, so that's always a part of it. But so Scotty Barnes is 1. Number 2 is Evan Mobley currently. And these aren't our projections, by the way, either. This was all from the NBA.com. This is their list. So this isn't us putting these guys in any sort of order. But my personal favorite out of all of these guys was Evan Mobley. He comes in at number 2 for the NBA.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I got to pause you here because you roasted me for pronouncing Franz Wagner's name incorrectly, and you just pronounced him Mobley and then Mobley. And so I'm going to have to ask you.
Did I say Mobley?
You did when you first introduced him. So which is it?
It's Evan Mobley.
God,
and I don't even remember saying Mobley.
I think you did. Maybe I just heard it.
I'm not even trying to be a name Nazi. Shout out to my dad because he will occasionally say things incorrectly and I will correct him and he gets mad at me for it. But I'm just sitting here. I'm the type of person that's like, I don't want you going around saying this in front
looking
of
out
other
for
people.
Yeah,
exactly. But I'm the bad guy.
Okay,
it is Evan Mobley.
Okay, I was going to say something, but I'm just going to leave it out.
No, go for it. What is it?
Okay, you and I are both big Marvel fans.
That is correct. Shout out to Marvel.
The Eternals is the most. The Eternals is the most recent movie, but can you tell me the name of the movie that came out before?
Before the Eternals?
Yeah.
Shang-Chi.
You got it
and the
wrong.
10
You named
Rings.
Nazi. It's Shang-Chi. It's
Oh
Shang-Chi.
my gosh.
I feel like we've had this conversation like 8 times.
And
you keep
I
pronouncing
know it
wrong.
was Shang-Chi. Why did I say Shang-Chi? I
I
sounded
don't
like
know.
an
But
idiot,
I'm
y'all.
just going to put you in your place. You no longer have a right to call me out on names.
That's it. We're going to be the biggest name Nazis, grammar Nazis. Moving forward,
You
if I
are.
catch you slip up on one thing, it's over. Evan Mobley, let's get into it. I thought he was the most impressive out of all of the rookies, and I think he actually is everyone's current favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. I think the only reason he's not number one is because he got injured, and he's back now. But if you see the stat I put on the show doc, Cleveland is 11-6 when he's playing, and they were 0-4 when he was not playing. It's obviously not a direct correlation to him being out, but I mean, he obviously plays a big part in why they're winning.
Mm-hmm.
His highlights, like, I haven't seen someone play like that in a long time. Like, the amount of blocks in his highlight tapes just from this year, it's like almost every clip is a block. He's jumping, swatting balls,
Right.
but he's also defending really well, and he's also like playing like offense really well. He's playing down in the paint, he's dunking, he's doing alley oops. I mean, you ask me, he doesn't look like he's a rookie. He looks like he's been in the league for a little while. He was definitely my favorite out of these guys so far. What did you think?
I thought he played good. He's really tall, and
7 feet.
maybe it's kind of ironic coming from me, which, I mean, I'm not tall compared to the NBA, but like I was a center in high school, so I was like the big guy. But he doesn't play, and this is maybe superficial. He doesn't play very flashy, and I always feel like you look back at just through NBA history, the tall players, they're naturally gonna just have an advantage. And yeah, he can block some shots, and I'm not saying that's not impressive, but to me, it's not always as exciting to watch, if that makes any sense. It's just like,
really, I love a good blocked shot.
I do too, but it is so much more inspiring and exciting when it's not the tallest guy on the court, when it's somebody who you don't expect to block the shot. You know what I mean?
That is true.
Like if I were going up to lay up against Evan Mobley.
Nope. It's actually Mobley.
Dang it. If I was going to lay up and he blocked my shot, I wouldn't be, that was crazy. Cause like, he's like a foot taller than me, but if you blocked my shot, I'd be like, dang, that was crazy. You know what I mean?
Well, and I'm not short though. I'm not a short guy though. So
why do you have to increase or lower your voice, whatever you just did to represent height?
It's for comedic effect.
Okay. No, I don't, and I'm not trying to I think it's interesting to watch. I think he is a great defensive player. And don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, the goal is to win games, and you win games by scoring points and by preventing the other team from scoring points. And he does a great job of that. So don't get me wrong. To me, going back to Scotty Barnes, I thought he was just more fun to watch. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
That's fair. I mean, I will say some of the shots he blocked were impressive blocks. They're not just like he's
right
over the top. Like he's chasing guys down, blocking them. He's doing it in clutch moments. So it's not just like a regular block.
Some of his blocks, and I will say, regardless of your size, he's behind the somebody laying up or something like that. He it's a fast break and he's coming up behind him. I always think that's really impressive. So, but again, he does have an advantage, and I feel like I'm saying that that's a bad thing. By no means is it. He wouldn't be my favorite is all I'm saying.
All I'm hearing is he's not good because he's tall. Wow.
Well, I don't know if this is a good thing or bad thing, but I just want flashy. I don't know why. I feel
a flashy player. That's one reason you don't like KD, because you feel like KD's not flashy. But I'm watching because you're okay. For example, everybody during the game, sometimes Tim will send me some text if he's watching it, and most of the time you're shouting out other players, and then when we talk the next day, you're like, well, KD did good, but he's just, he's not the flashy guy.
He'll have the most points.
Yeah, I'm expecting in these highlights for KD to suck. He's knocking down like mid-range jumpers like it's nothing. And I'm just like,
Right.
KD is carrying sometimes. Anyways, let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on. We're going to get to the Nets. We find ourselves just getting back to the Nets every single time. Let's just kind of fly through these next few guys. Number 3 is Cade Cunningham. He was the number 1 pick in the draft. He plays for the Detroit Pistons. They were actually 4-11 in his first 15 games with the team. But one cool stat is they've kind of compared him to LaMelo Ball because LaMelo was the Rookie of the Year last year. So they were trying to see, Cade's number 1 pick. Let's see how good he's doing compared to how LaMelo was doing at this point last season. They say that he's statistically doing pretty close to how LaMelo was doing, but he's still. I don't know. He can. I think I know why he was the number 1 pick. I mean, clearly he can do everything on the court. He can shoot threes. He can drive. He can dunk. He can defend. Like he's very much all around on the court. So, do you have anything about Cade Cunningham?
No. To me, watching his highlight reels, he was very. So okay, and again, not to harp on Scotty Barnes, it felt like he was capable of doing everything: offensive, defensive, 3 points, layups, whatever it was, dunks. Evan Mobley was a defensive menace.
Mobley.
My boy Evan. I'm just going to call him Evan. Cade felt like the opposite. He's very offensively, gifted. I didn't see a ton of defense, and the highlight reel, I don't know if he's a defensive player, statistically, I can't say, but the highlight reel just kind of showed one side of him. And on that, he was mostly shooting. Phenomenal shooter. Again, it wasn't just like the most flashy highlights. And I'm basing this off of like a 6-minute highlight reel for each of these players. So I could be way off on all of this. So forgive me, but.
Next up, we have Josh Giddey coming in at number 4. He was number 6 pick in the draft. He plays for OKC. Really what I saw in his highlights is just his assists. Like he can pass the ball so well. He's another really fun guy to watch. And I hope that, he's able to bring OKC, some wins, hopefully help really rebuild their team. And then lastly, we have Franz Wagner.
Ooh, what was that? What was that?
Franz Wagner for the Orlando Magic. He currently leads the Magic in total minutes, shot attempts, and has played in every game this season. He was the number 8 pick in the draft. But again, you didn't watch his highlights. I did. Compared to the other rookies, he's definitely a good role player, but nothing too insane.
It's interesting that there's a stat that he's known for, the shot attempts, but not shots made. One thing I'm learning just in as a general rule that is, to go back to day in a life of a new sports guy in feeling overwhelming, literally everything is put into statistics. And I'll be watching a game and just listening, and they'll these commentators will pull stats. I'm just like, how are you calculating these things? They'll say something
Evan Mobley's cousin's brother found the way to make it to the 3rd game of last season.
Well, yeah, they'll be 15 games from last season. If they were home games, they didn't score under 85 points.
Right.
Or it's just like, what, how are you?
They're making up new stats.
It feels
when he is shot, when they play in San Antonio and he shoots a 3 from the left side of the court when it's 80 degrees outside, he seems to make more threes or something.
They're just
making new things every day.
So that's another thing, just to kind of go back to that first segment here. If you're a new sports fan trying to get into it, sometimes the commentators just don't listen to them because they're just pulling stats out of their rear end, it feels like. And it's just like, I'm not going to try to keep up with that and stuff. So,
right.
But it's funny that they're keeping, I'm not saying shots attempted is not an important stat to keep track of, but that doesn't necessarily say
he's good.
Right. That could actually say that could actually mean the very opposite. Cause if he's shooting the ball more than anybody, but has less points than anybody, then that's a really bad sign. So
right.
I don't think that's the case if he's number 5 on the list and he leads in total minutes. Also, the Magic clearly keeps him in for a reason, but it's just interesting.
Maybe each week we can have we can each bring one really fun, just out of the blue
statistic.
Okay,
I like
the
that.
podcast.
That's good.
All right, everybody, let's go ahead and jump into the Nets update. We've already basically given you every Nets update so far, but we're gonna try to round it out here at the end of the podcast. So, the Nets currently are placed at third in the NBA power rankings. After their win tonight against the Timberwolves, they are 16-6. They're first in the East. And let's go ahead, kind of recap, some of the big things that Nets have gone through in the past week. First and foremost, Blake Griffin taken out of the rotation. I think you have something to say about this, because I remember the other day you were saying that you took this past week to kind of get familiar with more of the Nets players.
Right.
And so go ahead and tell me what you think about Blake Griffin being taken out of the rotation, because he hasn't played at all this past week.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So that first week of doing the podcast, I was just kind of watching games, familiarize myself with the general flow of everything. This week, I took the position of just like really getting to know my team, who are our big players, trying to familiarize myself with the bench as well, but mostly just kind of the big 5, 6, 7. Blake Griffin, he's a name that I've heard for a while, like, long before we've started doing this podcast. So I know he's kind of in his like past his prime, I guess. But I've been watching highlight reels of most of our players just to kind of see them at their prime. Man, Blake Griffin could play, and it is quite shocking to me. And again, I know he's past his prime, so I'm not expecting him to play like he could have 5 years ago. But it is shocking that he's not played the last probably 3 games.
Right.
And it's kind of a bummer because I enjoy watching him play. And, going back to my comment about wanting flashy players, like he is a flashy player. Like he's a strong player, both offensively and defensively. And he's got a rhythm that a lot of players don't. I feel like it's unfortunate to see him not on the court. But, to compare him to Chris Paul, he has come out and made some statements. He seems very humble about it, which I can respect that. I really appreciate that. He's just kind of willing to let the coach do what he does. But I do hope we get to see him play some this season.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll make his way back out onto the court. Because, I know the Nets have been winning this past week, except for the game against the Suns. But, I mean, I definitely think Blake Griffin can serve a purpose out there on the court. So hopefully he'll get back out there. Another big Nets headline is Joe Harris, their small forward and shooting guard, will be out for 4 to 8 weeks due to an ankle injury. I don't think since we've been doing this podcast, Joe Harris has been on the court at all. But
right.
He's been a big player. I don't know about a big player, but I think he was a starter for them whenever he's healthy. He played a big role in their team last year. But it doesn't look like we're going to get to see him anytime soon. So maybe when he gets back out there on the court, you'll get to see what kind of player he is. But let's go ahead and round out some of these games. Last week, we were reviewing the Nets Suns game. I said that, we both said that the Nets were going to win, and I said that KD was going to drop 40, and because he's a competitor, and Nets lose 113-107. KD drops 39, man.
39. You were so close.
I'll
give you a pat on the back. You were.
I appreciate it.
And I will say, like you said, he came to play. He competed. That was the most exciting game for me to see KD play. I felt like he kind of brought it. I mean, I'm not saying, again, I don't think he doesn't bring it in games, but he just doesn't have that pizzazz. I mean, he's just not flashy. Like, that's what it is. I wanted to read you this text, though. This is a text I sent you the night of the the Suns game. I said, we might be losing, but you know what I'm loving about this game? Our whole team is stepping up. KD is kind of unimpressive, as well as Harden. Bembry is crushing. Aldridge is doing great. We're still in it. But I did follow up with this. And I didn't keep track of the stats throughout the game. But don't hear what I'm not saying. KD is doing well. He's just not coming out like one might expect from him. And maybe I'm being a little harsh on Harden. His assist game is on right now, which he did. He pulled out 7 assists. But the thing with Harden, I'm sorry, he pulled out 14 assists. Excuse me. I was looking at KD stats there for a second. But Harden also had, I feel like that dude just throws the ball away so much.
Well, that was another big thing about the game was the turnovers, right? I mean, it was just one thing. It was one turnover after another that game.
Yeah.
And I watched the highlights of the game. It very much like we got hot at the end of it and we started to make a comeback, but then it got to the point where it was just like out of reach for us. So we couldn't really do anything. But I as well, I was impressed with Bembry. I was also impressed with LaMarcus Aldridge. That was just one thing. Like I just kept seeing Bembry dunk it or lay it up, and then LaMarcus
that was his
Aldridge
game for sure.
Was just hitting mid jumpers. Same thing as KD. I mean, like you said, you were. It's just funny to me that you say you were unimpressed by KD.
Well, here's my thing. I think ultimately what it is he is so level-headed, almost to a fault. Like it just, you know what I mean? Like, and then that is a phenomenal quality to have. You need that to lead a team, to score 39 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. You've got to be level-headed, and that's what he is. But it's just to a point where I'm just like, I want to see I want to see him stressed out. Like I want to see him, you know what I mean? Like I want to see him try. I feel like he threw up 39 points and wasn't trying. And if we could put some desperation on him, maybe we would have won that game. You know what I mean?
Well,
and maybe I'm wrong.
We'll just have to see come playoff time. Maybe it's going to be the playoffs that cause him to show that. I personally think that he's so good that it looks like he's not trying. But
that's probably all it is. And then that's kudos to him. And I know that I'm being like really hard on him and that's not fair, but I don't know. Like, I just feel like when we talk about these other teams, there is a fire under their butts that just keeps them moving. And like I said, Harden just is cool, calm and collected, and it's working for him. It doesn't always look like that. And it's just a weird thing to kind of get used to, I guess, so.
Right. Definitely. Well, let's move on from the Suns game. Nets also went up against the Knicks last week. They won 112-110, barely winning. And the first note that I have on the show doc under the Nets-Knicks game is, why does Tim hate the Knicks?
Well, that was a fun game to watch. I feel like as hard as I've been on KD, on air, I've probably been harder on James Harden off the air with you via text and phone calls and such, because I just feel like he throws the ball away so much. And, he had a quote after losing to the Suns. Can you read that? You've got it pulled up right there, right?
He is quoted saying, "I'm trying to figure out when to score, when to be a playmaker, when to do a little bit of everything. It's been a little difficult."
If you've been tracking with the NBA, if you are a sports guy, you probably know that he said that quote. I feel like everybody's aware of that strange thing to say.
I don't think it's as strange as you think it is.
Well, I'm not the only one, because a lot of the commentators were like, what are you talking about? Like, you're here to win a basketball game. Yeah. And I agree with them. I mean, I don't know. Like, he's obviously one of the greats for a reason. Like, it's hard for me to understand what he even means by that. But interestingly, he says that and then comes to this game with the Knicks. And I mean, he flipped a switch. Like, I don't know what his turnovers were. He still threw the ball away a few times, but I mean, he was on another level. Very entertaining to watch. Really put the team on his back. He walked away with 34 points, 10 rebounds, almost had another triple double. He had 8 assists. So he was just a couple away from that. But I mean, just really, and KD played well as well also. But I really was impressed with Harden. I felt like he was just on a different level. So,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't answer the question though. Why do I hate the Knicks? I think it's because this was the first game for me that I really enjoyed watching the Nets. Like, it was the first time I was like, man, I'm excited about being a Nets fan.
Wow. And that's interesting.
Unfortunately, the Knicks, unfortunately for them, I mean, I think it would have been any team, but it was a close game. Maybe there's also the battle for New York. I'm sure there's some rivalry there anyways. And maybe I just kind of felt that since that, I don't know, but it just kind of put this little hatred towards the Knicks. Cause I ended up catching part of the Knicks in the Bulls game last night. And I just found myself not even like intentionally, but I was rooting for the Bulls. I was just like, man, I hope the Knicks lose. And I had no investment in the Bulls, but I just knew that I didn't want the Knicks to win. And you know what? They didn't. So
you're a happy guy. Well, I don't want to go back and harp on this too much about the quote that Harden said, but what I personally think he's trying to say from that, and you may already get this, but I just think he's trying to figure out his role on the team right now. Like the commentator said the other night, I think it was on the Suns game, they're trying to figure out how to play as a team without Kyrie.
Yeah.
And so,
I get that.
Harden has a completely different role when Kyrie's out there. So he's trying to figure out when to step up, when to pass the ball more, when to take more shots. Because you also have KD out there, and you've got Patty Mills. You've got people that can shoot and score. So it might be difficult, because when you're past the ball, you got to open look for a three, but, you may have someone cutting into the basket that you might could pass away to ensure you get that dunk or something. It may be difficult for him to make those quick decisions, instead of just trying to be like, right, I'm gonna come out here and just shoot tonight and be the man. Like it could be difficult for him to realize that.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, and this may be a larger conversation that's being had, but we have the super teams, right? And for those of you in my position, this is an interesting statistic for me. I'm going to see if I can say this correctly. But the NBA keeps track, of course, of who has the most points ever scored in the history of the NBA. Right. And you have a way to filter that. You can filter it down to current players. And when you do that, the top 5 players, you have LeBron James. I might be wrong in the order of this, but I believe it's LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant,
or
James
Carmelo
Harden.
Anthony.
I'm sorry, Carmelo Anthony, not Anthony Davis. Carmelo Anthony, Kevin Durant, James Harden, and then Randall Westbrook. Sorry.
Randall Westbrook.
I'm still trying to get these names right. So 3 of the top 5 play together on the Lakers, and the other 5 play on the Nets with us. And I just think that obviously that says a lot about, okay, well, those 2 teams should be some of the best in the league. Obviously, right now, that's not necessarily reflective, but of course, I know the Lakers are kind of an older team, and even the Nets. KD and James Harden, they've been around for a while. But do you think that like having these super teams, is that part of what confuses somebody like James Harden? Because
definitely,
obviously, like if he's in the top 5 current players all-time points, the dude knows how to score a basketball.
Right.
So my thinking is like, go score. Like, go score points. Sure, Katie's out there and that might confuse things. But dude, if you've got the ball, go score some points. And I guess that's just what, it's almost like you feel like, well, there's a super team, so they're unstoppable. But if it's causing that kind of confusion, why don't they? I don't know. It's an odd dynamic to have.
It's just weird because sometimes it works. Like it worked for the Warriors when KD was with the Warriors. Like it worked for them. And like LeBron, like Anthony Davis went to the Lakers. He went from the Pelicans to the Lakers, and it was LeBron and Anthony Davis. And like, I don't know if people had to have considered that a super team because you have LeBron James and then Anthony Davis, even if you have 2 big name players, it's still really considered a super team nowadays. But like you said, like you would think you have James Harden, who's on the top 5 list, and you have Kevin Durant, who's also on the top 5 list. But like you said, you broke it down. You were like, you have James Harden, he's in the top 5. You would think they'd be doing great because they also have KD. Well, KD's ahead of him on that top 5, so he's even more of a scorer. You may think, So it's like finding out who's gonna be the leading scorer tonight, and I feel like they've kind of found like a middle ground. Like they're both consistently putting up 20 to 30 points, but at the same time, like with the logic you're using, you have these 5 people who are currently playing that are at the top of the list, like Carmelo Anthony, even though he's number 2, like he's coming off the bench for the Lakers. Like he's at the end of his career.
Right.
He's not even really like don't get me wrong, Carmelo Anthony's doing really well this season. But he's definitely not like, who would I rather have, KD or Carmelo? Right now, I'd have KD. You know, he's younger, he's a better scorer right now. But anyways, all of this is good conversation. Like it's good to sit back and kind of look at, maybe why the Nets aren't like destroying people. Because like, for example, they beat the Knicks 112 to 110. Tonight, they beat the Timberwolves 110 to 105. Like they're almost like all close games. Like they're all coming down to within like 5 points, it feels like. And I don't like, you would expect the Nets to really be like blowing teams out. Like they barely beat the Cavs last week. They barely beat the Magic last week. Like I don't know what it is and why they're not blowing these teams out, but I think it has to do with them trying to find that chemistry together.
Well, this is so we can just blame this on Kyrie. Thanks, Kyrie.
Thanks, Kyrie.
If you're listening, come back. Get vaccinated and come back. Golly, man.
That's another real interesting topic, is that whole vaccination thing with Kyrie. But I'm just excited to see if he's going to come back this season at all. So
do you know what he's doing? Like, so he's technically on the team, but like I'm assuming not practicing with them.
I don't think he is.
Like, I mean, just sitting at home, just like maybe I'll get vaccinated, maybe I won't. Like what? I just don't understand.
He's taken a stand for what he believes in, and so like I don't think he's just sitting back like, I don't really want to play tonight, so I'm not. I'm just gonna.
No, I don't either. But it's just, how is he keeping himself busy, and why?
He's probably training. I would hope he's training right now. He's still staying hot because, at any moment there could be a rule change where it's, he doesn't have to be vaccinated. He can come back and play. I think really that's what people are kind of, I think that's probably what he's waiting for. Because if that's his belief, whether it's like just a personal belief, a religious belief, like whatever it is that's holding him back, like he's standing up for what he believes in. And I don't think he's going to budge for basketball, because he's definitely shown in the past that basketball is one thing, but there's bigger things in life than that.
Right. Well, I mean, and I said it on episode 1, I respect him for that. Don't get me wrong. It sounds like we need him. I mean, sure, we're number 1 in the East, but it's
kind of crazy that we're number 1 in the East.
Yeah. How long are we going to hold on to that?
Yeah. Cause like, I don't know. When we're playing teams that are really good, we're not really, doing too well. So, like I said, we beat the Timberwolves tonight, 110 to 105. One of the best Timberwolves players, Karl Anthony Towns, he actually sat out tonight with an injury. He had a bruised tailbone, but KD put up 30. Harden had 20. Patty Mills had 23. So I think it was a good game all around. So yeah, Nets are 16-6, first in the East. Next week we're playing the Bulls, the Mavs, the Rockets, and then depending on when we record, they might have also played Atlanta by that time. But looking into next week, I think the Bulls game, I think that'll be a really good game. That'll be some competition. I think we should beat the Mavs. I think we should blow out the Rockets.
We should. With the Rockets, we should be outdoing the Grizzlies.
Because the Rockets are they're at the very bottom right now. So I'm excited for the Bulls Nets game, though. I mean, it's as excited, for the Atlanta game as well. But the Bulls game, that's
but
a
you're
fun
rooting
team
for
to beat.
Atlanta, so definitely
Exactly, because you don't what? You don't want Atlanta to win next week?
I want the Nets to win.
All right, we're going to wrap it up there, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Not a Sports Guy Podcast, and email us at notasportsguypodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to comment on our recent posts. We'll give you a shout out at the end of the podcast. Last week, we had a lot of people comment, so I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to everybody that commented.
God, you didn't have this pulled up ready to go. Dang, man.
Well, it's because we didn't have any comments. So shout out to everyone that listens.
Guys out. Skirt.
We had actually, how about this? I'll shout out Clarissa. She commented on one of our posts. It was kind of like making fun because I put some hashtags on each post, and that because of the hashtags, there's some like bots that come in and comment, and they say promote your podcast on or at WLB Records. Promote your podcast at blah blah blah. Clarissa came in and said promote your podcast at Arby's, and just thought it would be so funny to put it on there. I got a good giggle out of it. Shout out to Clarissa. Thank you for commenting. But again, this is the moment where we could be shouting your name out. So Tim encouraged them.
Yes. Well, and I said this earlier in the episode. If you have questions and you're trying to get into following along with us, submit them. We would love to talk about that. We want you to feel as included in this journey as I am. Don't want you to feel like we're, well beyond. That's one thing that Jacob and I have talked about, is making sure that this conversation is very much centered on those who are not a sports guy or gal. This is not a sports commentary podcast exclusively. We are very much designed to help you enter into tracking this season with the NBA. So if you're like me, give us your questions, and I might learn something too. So don't hesitate to ask.
That is exactly right. So again, thank you all for listening. Make sure you follow the podcast wherever you listen to it. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your sports friends, tell your non-sports friends,
especially those guys.
And
I'm hesitant for you to tell your sports friends, because they're gonna just get on here and
tell your sports friends.
Tell your neighbors, tell your hairdressers, the guy that
tell your mailman.
Yes,
the milkman.
Your baristas. Ooh, if you have a milkman, definitely tell him. But also tell us that you told the milkman, because I would love to know who has a milkman out there. Still, that's super fascinating to me.
All right, y'all. We'll see you next week.